do a quick session on game management, and I agreed. And the first thing I realized is I don't know what the hell game management is, because it's not really a thing. And at first, it was, what do we talk about? And then in my real life, in the job I have that pays for all the rugby stuff, I'm an attorney, and I realized ambiguous terms such as game management are exactly what I get paid to talk about. So I'll figure this out too. And so after talking it over, what I decided to do is talk about how the best way for coaches to actually manage their teams on game day. Because a lot of what I see from coaches, especially at the youth level, is, let's just be honest, there's a lot of screaming from the sideline. And I'm sure a lot of you guys used to play, and how many things do you remember your coach screaming at while you're in the middle of a ruck and you're actually listening to him and being like, oh, he said to ruck, I better ruck, right? Like, it doesn't happen, right? They're focused on other things, and they should be focused on other things, like, not getting obliterated by the prop on the other team. And I see more high school games than most because I've run high school HP stuff for years, and like, I hate to break it to you, but yelling "get there" isn't going to make a support player get there faster, right? Or anything like that. It's mostly useless. And I don't say that to insult anyone, because I used to coach this way too. And the only reason I stopped doing it is I saw myself on video going ballistic on the sideline and no one on the field paying attention to a damn word I said. And I realized, like, you look like an idiot, but what are you doing? And so that really led me to kind of change the way I coach in actual games. And so I approach coaching on game day as, you're no longer a coach, you're now a manager, right? And I got my guy Eddie Jones up there, because you go watch him when they go play games. He's wearing a suit, all right? And he's mostly sitting in the stands. When it comes to game day, he's there to manage everything. He's not there to bark orders from the sideline. And what I found is, if you're having to do your actual coaching on game day, it means you didn't do enough during the week, one, and two, you're probably too late. Because if you're teaching guys things 15 minutes before kickoff, you haven't had a chance to properly install it. So when we talk about game management, we're not just talking about what we do on game day. To be a manager, you kind of have to start on day one and set a tone for your team. Start setting goals and basically go out of your way to make game day the easiest day of your week, right? Get all your work done during the week. And so how do we do that? I kind of break it down to three phases. The first is, you need to have a big picture kind of yearly plan, right? The second is, you need to then tailor your training sessions around that, your day-to-day, your week-to-week. And then third, get yourself in the mindset that when it comes to be game time, you're there to manage, to help, and to let the players shine, because let's be honest, they're the ones doing the actual work, right? Your work's during the week. Their work is on game day. So when we say setting your season, this is something I'm big on, and something another coach told me years ago. You have to have a strategy and you have to have tactics, and they're not the same thing, right? Your strategy is your big picture plan. I think you should make it something simple, something snappy. And I should be able to walk up to every player on your team and say, what is your defensive strategy? And they should be able to tell it to me, right? That gets everyone on the same page from day one. We attack like this. Here's my sentence. We play defense like this. Here's my sentence. Our set piece goals are this. Here's my sentence. Your tactics are what you do to accomplish that strategy, right? They're your non-negotiables. They're your, we're always going to do this drill. Right? They're the guidelines you operate by. And in doing so, your tactics are going to help you achieve all of the different goals from your big picture strategy. Right? I used to be a history teacher in a past life. The example I always give, the Civil War, right? Robert E. Lee was considered the greatest tactician, period, when it came to war. He needed a hill, he could take the hill, right? But Grant had a strategy, right? Ready his railroads, ready his troops, ready his other stuff. And he won the war, right? And you're not trying to take a hill, you're trying to win a war, right? You got a 40, 60, 80 minute, whatever game. It's not enough to just do certain things well. You have to incorporate that into a bigger picture, and that's going to be your strategy. Okay? And so, when you should get this done, this needs to be preseason. Okay? You need to come up with your strategy before you run a single training session. Get your coaches together, get anybody else you think should have a seat at that table, and come up with what your strategy is going to be. Consider your personnel, consider the age level of your players, skill level, competition, length of season, team goals, all of that. No team strategy is necessarily going to be the same. If I'm running a first-year middle school program, my strategy is going to be different than if I'm running, say, a Division 1A college club. Right? Because everything, all the variables you're going to be dealing with over the course of the year are going to be different. In terms of coming up with tactics, I generally like to keep it simple. 4, 5, 6 things for each strategy. So I got 4, 5 things for attack. I got 4 or 5 things for defense. I got 4 or 5 things for our set piece / restarts, and that's it. Right? And rather than trying to teach everybody everything, narrowly focus everything during the week so that when you get to game day, you have specific measurables and objectives that you can start looking at. And the more objective they are, A, the easier it's going to be to measure, and B, the easier it's going to be for players to understand and incorporate the lessons they're going to get there. So how does this look? I had to take over the IU program kind of on the fly in the middle of the season this year, and so this is what I came up with when I first started. Our defensive strategy, pressure attackers and possessions to create turnovers. Our attack strategy, use tempo and off-ball movement to play a fast-paced wide game. That was it. That's what we did. And so every game we came in, hey, when we have possession, we're looking to move the ball, and we have runners coming off the ball. Constantly. Everybody's a threat. So how do we work that? And I'm going to focus on attack because I hate defense. These were our tactics. The ball's going to move 5 by 5. Anybody know what I mean? 5 by 5. The ball's going to go from one 5-meter line to the other 5-meter line. Back and forth. As many times as possible, preferably in as few phases as possible. Right? So we're always looking to move the ball 5 by 5. Everybody except for 9 is interchangeable. We played Michigan State, and the best kick we had all game came from our loose head prop, who was lined up as the first receiver, and booted one down in the corner for a 50-22. Right? It's a 6'3", 280-pound man. But it was there, and he took it. Right? First receiver, strike lines, fill lines. These are just my words for various lines you can run. Groundwork, so what are we doing in the tackle? And clear and cover. First supporter clears out, second supporter covers. This is all we worked on in attack. That's it. We didn't do anything else.
Can you go through the ball? I can't really read it. Number 1 under your attack strategy. Can you go through that again?
The ball moves 5 by 5. One 5-meter line and the other 5-meter line.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And so, in implementing this, when we get to game day, all right, I can measure all of these things, right? And I'm skipping ahead, short on time. All right? And so, when I get to my training sessions, I can now tailor my training sessions around those things. So I've set my tactics. I can now do my work during the week, and I can look at my tactics and say, okay, we need to get better at moving the ball 5 by 5. Well, how do we do that? Well, what's the most important thing to move the ball 5 by 5?
Ball handling.
Yeah, passing and ball handling. If we can't pass, not going to happen, right? And so literally the first practice I came to IU, we tore it down to the studs, right? Where it was one guy here about 5 meters away, both on your knees, just passing the ball back and forth, right? Working on hands out, catch, pass, move ball, right? Because even though they were a talented team with a lot of skilled guys, they weren't good enough at kind of the micro skills in order to get these things done. And as we progressed during the week, or during the season, week to week, we scaffolded on, and we added various things into the training. And so we took it down to basics, and then we built them up as they met specific goals. So, going back to our tactics, specifically for attack. Tuesday were collision days, Thursday was basically ball movement running days. So on Tuesdays, we would work carrying into contact, right? Where do we take the ball? How do we take it on contact? How do we work on the ground, right? My big thing is you always want to put the ball on platter, so get all the way back, put the ball up so your scrum half can get it. Okay? And we implemented our expectations for support in terms of first guy clears it, second guy covers up, right? Nobody arrives. Thursdays, right, we started with simple catch pass drills, simple line running drills, And then we started using different games. And there are a million touch games, right? You can do variations, superpowers, all the different things. You start putting them in unique scenarios where, hey, yeah, I play lock, but I'm in the first receiver position, and I have to catch that ball, and I have to move it to somebody else. And you have to get guys comfortable in those roles, because if you don't, and the first time they ever have to do it is in a game, it's probably not going to go well, right? And so you can start moving them around, forcing them out of their comfort zone, and getting used to operating with the ball in space. And so that became kind of our training. And as the season went on, we started adding. So here's extra stuff you can do on the ground, right? And there's all kinds of stuff. 12-6 is the most common one I use. Stripping, right, where you come out and then you come back. Rolls, right, all kinds of things. We started working various scenarios, and then we started adding groundwork into touch games, right? Everybody, how many of you guys see it, right? You're playing a touch game, guy gets tagged, what's he do? Rolls the ball through and stands there, right? So we just implemented a new rule. Every time you get tagged, you launch just like you would in a tackle situation. You work 12-6, you put the ball on the platter, right? Every single time. And if in a touch game, you didn't do it, if you did the roll through, or you ever see the one where they like just slide down and put the ball back, shit like that, I can't stand that stuff, right? Whole team runs, right? And you just drill it into their heads. These are our tactics. These are not negotiable. We're working on them in all phases, right? So we started going bigger passes, adding kicking, add offloads to your games. But the point is, you start small, and week to week you build them up. And the reason you're going to be able to do this is because you're going to spend game day evaluating just these tactics, right? These are your core things. So this is what you want to evaluate on game day. You're not breaking down the whole team's performance, because that's just going to be information overload. You're sticking to what's important. All right, so once we get to game day, that's basically, like I said, the easiest day. You're just coming in to manage the team. You're not doing your coaching on game day. You did all your coaching during the week. You set your expectations. You had the same expectations all season, and you built kind of these, I call it towers, right? You want to stack your strengths. You stacked everything to get where you want to go. And so players come in and they know what you're looking for, and they're trying to execute those things. Pre-game. When you guys played, who loved like the full 90-minute warm-up? All right? But I watched teams, coach, like, we got to be there 2 hours early. Like, you're basically running an entire training session before the game. Guys don't need that, right? Like, honestly, 30 minutes. All right, I have it up there. My ideal warm-up, we're going to get there about 75 minutes early, get taped up. 60 minutes out is when we start. Right? You want to get some extra work in early? That's fine. That's on you. 60 minutes. And the first 30 of that, I let guys work independently, because we've established what are they going to be working on. They're going to be working on their tactics, right? They know the very specific skills that we need to execute what we want to execute. So getting them to work on these various things, you shouldn't have to tell them, because you've been hitting it all week. Remember, you did your work during the week. So I give them 30 minutes of independent time, and if you watch my IU guys, they spend that 30 minutes, there's someone over there working on their passing, right? There's someone over there working on their contact stuff. There's someone over there working on their groundwork. They're hitting what they think they need to work to get there. And all I'm doing is walking around, making sure they're A, doing it correctly, and B, not being idiots, right? Because you always got one. And so that's their time to work on what they need to work on. I don't come in until about 30 minutes before. I'm 25 minutes an hour. Right? Because I'm not coaching them, I'm managing them, right? We do about a 10-minute dynamic warm-up. Usually end up with a 3-on-2 drill that I like because it gets guys moving. We'll do about 10 minutes split, so the forwards can run through their set piece, the backs can run through their kind of base sets, right? Maybe 5 minutes to run the field, we're out, right? That's the hardest I'm going to work on game day. Because, again, I'm not there to coach. If they don't have it 30 minutes for kickoff, they're not going to have it come game time, right? So coming into pregame, it's just simple, get them going. It's not a training session. It's to prep them for kickoff. And this is the most important part. I mentioned it earlier. Use your time wisely. Games should be an evaluation. Where is our team? Okay? We have what we're looking for. How are we going to measure it? Right? Track your data. How many of you guys use assistant coaches or players or parents to track, say, tacklers or something like that? There's a couple, right? I guarantee you there are a half dozen dads on every team who would love to be like, oh yeah, I'll count your tackles for you, right? Guys who played in high school and all they want to do is be involved and be useful and feel like they're helping the team, right? And they're probably going to brag about it to their friends when they're having a beer later that night. It is an untapped resource, right? And tap into that. You got injured players over there who are not going to play. Every one of my tactics has an objective measure. What's the advantage of an objective measure?
Identify your strengths and weaknesses.
Identify all of them, right? We can measure and look at everything. So if we go back to my tactics for attack, when I'm looking at the contact stuff, I can track how many tackles did we have where nobody worked on the ground, right? How many times guy got tackled and just laid there, or did the lazy thing and just kind of pushed the ball back, or worked around and then rolled the ball back so it was out right away instead of putting it on a flat. I can count all of that. Or I can have a player, be like, count them all, right? And so we'll just have a tally sheet, and when I coach the older guys, right, I will literally have them write their name. So I can go and be like, Zach Marsh, 3 times you rolled that ball out, right? And I can call him out. Like, nobody else on the team had more than one. The hell you doing, right? And it creates an accountability because players know everyone's expected to do these things. If I'm not doing it, I will get called out for these things, right? I can track turnovers or slow ball because we didn't have a clear cover. Right? Every time we turned it over, right? Did we clear and cover and turn it over? Okay, I can live with that. Were we not there? Were we slow to get there? Did a second guy not come in to cover it? They just came to poach ball? I can track all that, right? I can track the number of times we go 5-by-5 on the field. I can track how many strike lines we run in a game. Right? I can also, if I want to make it simpler, how many times did the ball go wide and nobody ran a strike line? It's by one rule of attack. Somebody asked for us, you guys know what I mean when I say strike line? Like an underline or a punch, right? I don't use, how many of you guys use the term punch and Judy? Man. I like punch and Judy. I have beef with the term. I can track the phases where players act interchangeably, right? How many times did a forward step into the first receiver spot? Right, I can count that. These are all things I can count, or I get a parent to count. Right? Some of them might be a little too rugby intense, like did a forward, run this. But these are all things I can track. And so I'm not spending my game yelling, get there, or calling in plays from the sideline, or doing these things. I'm spending my time tracking the things that are important to us, that we're doing well, that we're doing poorly, or we're just not doing at all. And at the end of the game, I'm going to have a significant amount of data that I can actually use to move the program forward. Because I can take that data and say, hey, we're doing a shit job moving the ball 5-by-5. And when we get to our next training session, what are we going to work on more? Moving the ball 5-by-5, right? Our groundwork is terrible, okay? We played Wisconsin and Kearney, so hey, right? Our groundwork was terrible in that game, right? We spent 30 minutes the first session after that, just, hey, this isn't complicated. There's no skill required. It's all effort. And we did nothing, like they literally didn't stand up for 30 straight minutes, right? They were just on the ground doing different groundwork things for 30 straight minutes. Never had a problem with it again, right? These are the kind of things you can take from your games and you can move them into your training sessions. As for post-game, my advice to everybody, don't do, and I always do post-game reports for my players, where I do like, hey, here's what we did well, here's what we did poorly, here's what the data shows, MVP of the game, this is the game, this is the game. I don't write those for at least 24 hours. Because, especially after you lose, you can't really take an objective look immediately after a game. So I highly recommend, look at that data. Don't just self-assess in terms of thinking what you're going to do next week of training, but report that out to the team. Because if you're collecting all this data and not reporting it to the team, you're kind of just sitting on what they need to know. They need to know if they're not working on the ground. They need to know if they're not there in support. They need to know if they're not running strike lines correctly. And you have all the data that shows whether they're doing it or not. At the same time, if they're doing an awesome job running, say, fill lines, or the forwards are doing an awesome job out in the back line, they also need to know that, because we shouldn't just focus on the negative. We should congratulate them when they're doing something correctly. Okay. I'm a big fan of individual reports. There's a ton of apps out there. I use Skillshark. If you've never used it, it's a great evaluation tool. It costs a couple dollars per person, but you get a yearly thing, whatever. Not sponsored. But find what you like. If you don't like any of them, find your own system, right? Create a spreadsheet, create something. But you need to try to get player feedback, because it's valuable to players to not just to get the team data, but it's valuable even if it's just a couple of bullet points per player. Hey, you did this, 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 you did this. If you need to, go back and watch your film. How many of you guys film your games? Yeah. All right. I think, 10 years ago I was at a conference. I said, go back and watch your film. And I asked that same question, and like one person put their hand up. But now everybody films all their games. And if you don't, there's a good chance whoever you're coaching against is filming the game, and they'll probably share it with you. So watch your film if you have the time. Right? Give feedback, because that feedback is going to make your work during the week easier. And again, get your work done during the week, because that's going to help you be the manager you want to be on game day. So, in summary, right, in the preseason, sit down, come up with a strategy, get the tactics to make that work, and then focus your training time. Do your work during the training, so that game day just becomes management, right? You're there to make sure everybody's got a jersey. You're there to make sure the subs are right. You're there to make sure the data gets tracked. But you've done all your work during the week. Don't do your coaching on game day. Again, it's too late. Okay? Do your coaching during the week. Get your team ready to go. And what I've found is, A, players are going to be more responsive, and B, the feedback you are capable of giving them after the game is going to be much more in depth. And it's going to be more effective, because there's weight behind it, if that makes sense, right? It's not just I thought you did a great job hitting rucks. Okay, right? Like, what's that mean? Narrowly tailor everything. Part of the problem with coaching youth is, how many of you guys on your teams play multiple sports? A lot, right? You're just not going to have the time. They're not going to be year-round. You got a couple weeks, especially up here, right? It's probably really cold until like May. It's cold over here. So you're not going to have the time or the hours. You're not going to get kids who have been playing since they're 4. It is what it is. And so if you narrowly tailor what you're doing, if you focus on specific things, then it's going to allow you to be more effective, and the other stuff will come later. So figure out what it is that's important for how you want to play, and focus on those things, right? I coached at IU all fall. We didn't work on restarts, like kickoffs and kickoff returns once in 3 months. Right? Now, some people might be like, you're an idiot. Those things are important, and they are. But we spent our time focusing on these things because these were important for how we wanted to play. And we could have sacrificed those tactics, those pillars, right? But we didn't. We stacked our strengths and got good at those things. And it's going to make your job easier on game day, right? Because you're not trying to do a million things. You're like, I'm looking for this, this, and this. That's it. And it's going to make evaluating your players, feedback for your players, and recognizing gains and deficiencies easier as well. Okay? Are there any questions? Sorry, I had to move fast. Karen over here. She's the worst. College. Who needs it?
When you talk about player feedback, can you give me an example of like things you give them back in feedback? Like you said, you don't just say you did good on rucks. Like what would be some positive or negative you would do so that they focus next week? Like just player X did something. Like give me an example of something you would do.
Yeah. So part of it is I'm data driven, right? So like I said, I'll put down their name, right? If they don't work on the ground, I'll go back to my guy Zach Marsh. Only because he led the team and not working on the ground. Still made first team All Big Ten. So I'll be like, look, 6 times you got tackled and didn't work on the ground. right? Now he got better as the course of the year, probably because every single eval said something along the lines of like, I caught you 5 times not working on the ground. I caught you 4 times. All right, and you read the email, Zach Marsh led the team again in not doing this. And at a certain point, they're just getting peer pressure. So you could put the data in there, and then if you can cite the film, that's always great too, right? So you say, hey, look at the ruck you had around the 32-minute mark. Look at the ruck you had, And so I'm going through, and I realize this is a lot of time. You guys are volunteers, and you're going to be like, I don't have time to watch the game. You're probably right. I shouldn't be taking the time to watch the game. I'm just an idiot. Anytime you can cite the specifics and go to film and say, look at your position here. Especially if it's something they do well sometimes and poorly other times, you can say, hey, look, at the 32-minute mark, you did this beautifully. At the 54-minute mark, you did this terribly. Look at the difference. And that's going to have a big impact because they get visualization. I told you guys I use Skillshark. The main reason I use it is they allow you to actually upload video clips into their evaluations. So, if you want to clip, a play, a backline play, you can clip it and then upload it into somebody's eval as many times as you want with comments. So I can send somebody an eval that says, hey, your attack lines are great this week. Video, so they can just say, they can see, accentuate the positive, for lack of a better word. Okay. Any other questions?
I'm just listening to you say all this stuff, and I was thinking that if the high school coaches apply this, or you were a high school coach and you had data, that's something great for a high school player to be able to say to a college coach.
Yes.
Over the season, my strike through rate is 90%. Every time I have the ball, I'm making the game. That's not a stat I've ever seen asked. That's an interesting one to present. So I'm just letting the high school coaches know that for you to keep data or ask a parent to do this, there's a return on it. This is more data they can present to college coaches. Even if it's not asked for, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
And that's the other the other positive of the evaluations. If you can find something where they're all going to be at the same point, right? You now have that kid now has all these different data points to share. And if you have a college coach ask you, call you and ask, hey, what's this kid do for this, and this? It's at your fingertips, right? I have the IU guys. I'll get calls from MLR teams about some of the seniors, and they ask me, what's this kid like? What's this kid like? And obviously, the personality stuff, I don't need email. I mean, yeah, he works hard. But in terms of what's he doing on the field, I just pull it up, right? And I can say, hey, look, all of his stuff on, I don't have a single negative comment on here about his work on the ground, right? And that goes to effort because it takes zero skill to get tackled and turn around, right? It's done. Is it in your brain, and are you willing to work hard enough to finish a tackle? That's it. It's effort. It's not skill. And so, those kind of things. When I'm looking at those kind of things, I'm giving those evaluations to those programs. That's the kind of stuff I look for, and I have it all at my fingertips, which is nice. Anybody else? No. So I'll usually track it, and then I'll go through and manually enter it. My big thing, I don't track everything every game. I always track groundwork because groundwork is effort, and I feel like groundwork. Do you guys know what I mean when I say groundwork? Work on the ground after you get tackled. Okay, just making sure. So I always track that one, and I always track it myself. So I want to make sure it's right. We'll track missed tackles. One of my defensive things is win one-on-ones. So we'll always track, if you bust a tackle, you get checked for that, right? And look, it happens. There's not a person in here. Look, if you have 0 missed tackles over the course of your career, it means you probably weren't very good on defense anyways, right? And everybody gets one, right? Some of them I remember vividly. And so we always track that one, but we'll just go through and enter it. I'll usually go through and enter it on a spreadsheet, and then into those evaluations. Any other questions?
I would say like throughout a week of say practice with your players, would you ever have like a session with the team you watch film, or would you more prefer that they watch film individually by themselves?
So both, especially with college kids, they have a crap ton of free time. So asking them to watch film twice in a week is really not a big ask. And so generally we will, either myself or I didn't do much film with the guys this year, but one of the guys was my assistant coach would go through it with them, or at least try to as best we could. And then, I would make sure they had links to everything and they would watch it. I would usually send out a comment sheet afterwards. I tried as much as I could to cite to look at this minute mark, this minute mark, this minute mark, this minute mark. Not always possible, but sometimes you just get crappy film. Happens, right? We filmed a lot of our stuff with the drone, which after about 3 games of watching it, I realized it was a terrible, terrible mistake because you get bad angles and fuzzy video. So we kind of had to change that on the fly. But, you live, you learn, right? Other questions?
Oh, you're the cameraman.
All right. Sorry I had to rush through this so fast.